Hello, Midland Christian family, and welcome to the MCS podcast, telling the story of Midland Christian School, past, present, and future. Welcome into the studio, and we're pleased to be joined again this month by Dr. Anderson. It feels a little bit different here on campus than it did the last time that we talked. There's just something a little different about having our actual student body on campus and a lot of movement. How was the first week, and now that we've been through like kind of the first full week of school, how are you feeling about the start to the school year?
Overall, it's been so unbelievably positive, Trent. I've had conversations with several staff members and several students, and there's just something that's different about this year, and I think I know what it is. We finally have a vocabulary that we all can read from the same script. And so Live, Love, Learn last year was really in concept phase, but now it's actionable, as are the pillars of the ideal graduate profile. So our teachers now have a roadmap that they can use to incorporate into everything from instruction to instructional design, to just the way that we interact with students, because we know what our long-term desired outcomes are. And so I think it's just brought a peacefulness and a joy to our campus, maybe even a greater sense of security, that we all know what we're striving for. So that's been really exciting to see. I know that some folks have had some previews into this and some conversations about it already, but even just focusing on the us and Mustangs this year, I think the seeds of that are already taking root, and we're seeing a lot of folks realize, what happens in my life is important, but I'm only going to be able to do, me in the context of us. So how do we work together? How do we study together, play together, compete together, learn together? And so far, off to a great start.
I've had the chance to kind of sit down with some students on and off camera and talk about, the theme. And so many of them have mentioned, when I first got here, the community and so much of what drew them into Midland Christian was not an individual program or an individual person, but it was the collective.
Right.
It was the collective. So really excited about our theme this year, and have had so much good input on what campus ministry is doing. So now as we kind of transition into our routine as a campus, we start to get into the day-to-day of learning and growing as a campus. And part of what really drives that is our annual fund, which is what we released this last week. And so what can you tell us about this year's annual fund? I know we talked kind of in some broad terms the last time we met, but maybe more specifically, what is the annual fund funding in so to speak this year?
Yeah, so I definitely want to draw people to the communication pieces that our communications department has sent out. I just think there's a tremendous value in actually seeing that documentation. There's some visuals associated with it. For instance, we want to bless band, but we want to bless band with a specific set of instruments this year. Mr. Broom is trying to raise some funds for at least one specific instrument. Of course, it's also going to help with repairs and upgrades and that sort of thing to some of the other things that they're trying to do in the fine arts space. Speaking of which, also would mention our theater department is trying to upgrade some lights and get some risers for the spring musical. And so that's just in the fine arts space. We continue to work on security upgrades. I think that's going to be ongoing. And so there's some really great things happening in that space. In addition to that, we have some really special plans for campus ministry this year. As is becoming a tradition here, we are purchasing Bibles for our sixth graders. A lot of schools purchase Bibles for seniors, but we actually would prefer that our sixth graders get those so that they can make some notes in them and begin to use it as their primary study Bible. And I think it just creates some great memories as they walk with that Bible, through their Midland Christian experience. Of course, we'll be doing some additional training. We'll be bringing in some speakers. I know our parents have heard a lot about Protect Young Eyes, and we're really, really looking forward to having them back on campus this year.
Yeah, and the annual fund is so much of an ongoing process. Right. Maturing as a campus and as an organization. And so as we fund this school year. And it's so much fun to see just some of the fruits of that and see things go up. A lot of them that you see physically as you drive through the campus, but a lot of that is the security piece and maybe some of the things that are in a specific sport or a fine arts program that you may not ever see.
Right.
But trusting that the Lord is doing a great work in various areas of our campus. I'd like to spend just a little time asking and talking with you about kind of our mission statement and some of the things that we've discussed in the past. And we got to spend some time as a staff really talking through, okay, we now have a mission statement. We now kind of know what our goal is or what we're setting out to achieve and the why behind that. Now maybe it's time to get into some of the how. And so maybe as we've talked, I think we start to see as a campus, now everyone's walking around, they have the live, love, learn on there, and you're going to see that just about anywhere you go on campus. I think people are starting to digest that part of our mission statement. But how do we live that out? Maybe we understand the what, but maybe what's the how?
Yeah, I so appreciate you asking that question, because that's really been, where we've been trying to do the majority of our work, especially as we ramped up for in-service and now these first several days of school. What we're really trying to help our students understand, and I think it's wonderful that we have Live, Love, Learn, plastered all over the campus, from our signage to our lanyards, to our wraps. I mean, it's just been so fascinating to see that work, and as important as that is, it's 10 times more important, 100 times more important, maybe 1,000 times more important that that's written on our hearts, because that, I believe, is what will truly set us apart as an organization, as a Christian school, that if we truly are people who are dedicated to living for God, I mean, just think of the ramifications just for that one piece alone, that my life is dedicated to living for God. But the actionable aspect of that is, man, if we're loving like Jesus, reaching out to the marginalized, giving hope to the hopeless, helping and blessing the hurting, and just entering into those spaces that not everybody is interested in leading into and living into these days, but Jesus was, and he is. And so if we can be his hands and feet through that, we're committed to loving like Jesus. I think the implications of that are just profound, and God honoring, of course, and then learning for life. I mean, I don't know about you, we live in a time of fast information, but I'm not so sure it's all sinking in. I can Google a result, and I may have the answer, but it doesn't mean that I'm really learning it and owning it deeply and being transformed by it. So I think the intentionality that we have here as a school about doing that is just going to pay huge dividends, not only for our students, but even for our staff. Because I don't know about you, it's easy for me, as an older adult now to quickly, get an answer without really thinking through and problem solving and processing. I will say that I'm so grateful that our team, we wrestle in prayer, as we work through this whole Live, Love, Learn phenomenon that's taken place here, came directly out of deep times of prayer and processing and lots of conversation. So a little bit of a lengthy response to the first part of your question. That is the why. That's our purpose. It's why we exist. It's that, we'll call it our Live, Love, Learn strategy. But the how then, if that's why we exist, how do we exist? That's really where the 4 pillars of our ideal graduate profile come into play. So when our students walk across that graduation stage, here's what we hope and pray will be above all else in their heads and hearts. We hope there will be a spirit of Christ-likeness. And there's a reason that's number 1. It's not just because it helps spell the care acrostic, that was just kind of a bonus. But Christ-likeness is number 1. And so we hope and pray that through time in the Word every day, time in worship every day through chapel, these formative experiences through Mission Week, being the athlete, on the court or on the field, that when an opponent, even if we, kind of lay that opponent out, that we offer a hand up, because that's what sets us apart. It's a Christ-like attitude that permeates everything that we do. And then we unapologetically want to be about academic preparedness. That's another part of our how that, we want our students to learn and we want them to grow. And I believe that we are aligning our faculty and staff, those competencies that they have as educators, we're aligning those competencies with our instructional approach and our curriculum design. And we may talk about that a little bit later today if we have time. If not, we'll circle back around on a future podcast. And then we want to be relationship driven. I think that's so critical, not just in our relationships with one another, which were incredibly important, how we treat one another. We don't bully here. We don't belittle here. We don't use our words destructively here. We're different people. We're called to different behaviors and attitudes. So we do want to have positive relationships with each other, but we also want to be relationship driven in, how we interact with and live in our relationship with the Lord, and getting to know Jesus through study and prayer and serving together and so much more, and our relationship with the Word. And through all of that, then plumbing the depths of our relationship with God's Holy Spirit as that Spirit moves and lives through us. So we want to be very intentional about driving relationships, even relationships with universities, that our kids will be going to eventually, and making sure those are solid and secure. Because ultimately, it's important that we graduate amazing students, but I want those students to come back and reach out to us 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and be able to say things like, I'm a better husband or a better wife because of what I experienced at Midland Christian School, or I can't tell you how much of a better dad I am as a result of what was poured into me. Now I'm pouring that into my children and I'm seeing the fruit. Or what an amazing employee, my boss tells me that I am, and I owe a lot of that to what was poured into me during my times at Midland Christian, my time at Midland Christian. So those are the things that I'm hoping for, that as we're pouring into our students, which leads to that last piece of emotional intelligence, and that kind of completes the CARE acronym, right? It's that Christ-likeness and academic preparedness and being relationship driven and being emotionally intelligent, that we believe creates this incredibly well-rounded student who is just prepared to not just live out the live, love, learn strategy while they're here, but really to be able to live that for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. And we actually just had an episode with two Midland Christian graduates who are now competing in 4 or 5 years down the road, and getting to hear them come back and talk about the relationships that were so formative in their current success, but what they believe will be their continued success as they pursue excellence in whatever field they go into. So I did hear a slick phrase just the other day. I heard someone mention drive to 75. Mm-hmm. Can you explain to me kind of what that might be, or what may be coming around the corner?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So drive to 75 is a phrase that folks may have heard mentioned in passing. And it is a little catchy,
I love it. Yeah,
it's one of those phrases. If you've ever read the book Made to Stick, there's a stickiness to that phrase. It's hard to get it out of your brain once you've heard it for the first time. But most folks know that Midland Christian School was founded in 1957. So we're just at about 7 years or so before we celebrate our 75th anniversary. Wow. And so as we were batting a lot of conversations back and forth, and when I say we, I'm talking about the board and administration and teachers and parents and students. So really just as everybody poured conversationally into what God's been doing here in the last couple of years, this drive to 75 just appeared. And I don't remember exactly where it came from, but at some point in conversational space, it was just one of those phrases that popped, and then it stuck. And so as we began to think about the opportunity, when the purchase of the 42 acres came along, and then begin dreaming dreams about a fine arts facility, and then begin thinking about how we can really sustain our teachers, as we added all of that up, what it would cost us to get there, ironically, it was going to be about $75 million. So we put our 75th anniversary, kind of yoke that with the need of about $75 million to really realize all of these incredible God-sized hopes and dreams. And so it's basically both sides of that idea of the drive to 75. Jason Stockstill, as we were talking about it, said, there's actually even a third component. It's like, how do we use these next several years to lay an incredibly solid foundation for the next 75 years of the school's future? And so the more we talked about it, the more excited we became about it. And so we have been engaging in conversations with several different people who have a lot of expertise in the area of fundraising. And they are helping us put together a strategy and a plan that we would say right now we're in what's called in the world of fundraising a silent phase, that we're basically putting our strategy together. We're putting an infrastructure together so that we can track not only those gifts that may be significant from individuals or families, but also what do we do with foundations who might like to partner with us, or corporations or sponsors. So there's going to be ultimately, I don't have an exact number right now, but multiple, we'll call it revenue streams, to help us fund this drive to 75. I'm not exactly sure when. We feel like when we get about halfway there, so that we know that we're probably in that $35-36 million range, somewhere around in there, that we will go public with the campaign at that point, and then invite anyone who would like to participate, whether they choose to be part of affinity giving. So I have a real passion for softball, or I have a real passion for track, and being involved in that context. Or they may just say, you know what, I just want to bless everything that's going on, whether it's fine arts or teacher sustainability, and I want to help with that. We also want to make sure that folks have opportunity to just network. And so it could be very possible that someone's like, wow, I've just started this new business and my financial resources are really, really tight right now. However, I've got some great relationships with this foundation or that endowment or this individual that's part of our company who has really helped organizations lead successful campaigns, and I'd like to introduce you guys. So we believe strongly that the financial aspect of this is of course important, but what's more important is going to be a commitment to prayer, a commitment to working together, to leveraging the incredible network that this organization has established over the last 67 years of its existence. So we'll use these next 7 or 8 years to really, really live into that incredibly strong foundation, to just see what the Lord, through the power of His Holy Spirit and through the prayers of His people, what that accomplishes.
Well, incredibly exciting stuff as we get prepared for the next phase and what God has in store for us around the corner, and just excited to see what might we see just initially in the next year or so as we start to step into this fundraising space.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have introduced a phrase that we're trying to really live by as we move into the future, and it's called organized flexibility. Organized flexibility. You'll probably hear that phrase quite a bit over the next several months. And so our hope is that we may see a practice track as early as next year. That's what we're hoping for. Obviously there are several T's that have to be crossed and I's that have to be dotted. We have some things maybe that are outside of our control, weather, things like that, supply chain, that we really have no control over. However, we're hopeful that if things continue to track in the direction that they have, that we would be able to get our students on a practice track sometime next year, which will be a huge win for the school for sure. And then I do know that the board is really dedicated to not going into long-term debt to help us fund some of these initiatives that are in future planning. And so I applaud that. I think that's very wise. I think that's being good stewards of the school's resources and finances. And so, as we secure commitments and as we secure strong partnerships, then that will really put us into a place to look at specific timelines related to constructing various venues, beginning planning and work ultimately on our Fine Arts Center, and of course continuing the work related to teacher sustainability.
Well, Dr. Anderson, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sitting down with us, and we can't wait to do it again here in the next month or so, and continue to look at what God has in store for us around the corner and right here and now.
Awesome, Trent. Thank you. It's always a blessing to sit down with you, brother. I appreciate all you're doing.